People are looking for meaningful work, and they want to know that they're making an impact in the community. And I think that's true across all generations, but we clearly are seeing that with the millennials.
Welcome to Unsuitable on Ray Radio, the award-winning financial services and business advisory podcast that challenges your old-school business practices and their traditional business suit culture. Our guests are industry professionals and experts who will challenge you to think beyond the suit and tie while offering you meaningful modern solutions to help enhance your company's growth. I'm your host, Dave Kane. Today's guest believes that organizations have more tools at their disposal when it comes to recruiting and retention than they might think. A professional in human resources management, Ron Guisinger, serves as a senior consultant with the Benefactor Group, which is located in Columbus, Ohio, where he provides clients with leadership governance, executive transition, succession planning, and general HR consulting services. On this episode of Unsuitable on Ray Radio, Ron will explain how businesses that promote a culture of giving back can have more success when it comes to recruiting and retaining top talent. Welcome to Unsuitable, Ron.
Thanks. It's good to be here.
Yeah, you've got quite a resume. Talk to me a little bit about Benefactor Group. Where are you guys located?
Sure.
Maybe a website?
Sure. We are located here in Columbus, Ohio.
Okay.
We serve clients across the country. All of our clients are in the nonprofit sector. Prior to doing this, I worked in the corporate sector in the tech industry. But for the past 10 years, been working with Benefactor Group. Our clients range in size from the smallest grassroots nonprofit to very large pediatric children's hospitals.
Wide range.
So wide range. It cuts across the nonprofit sector, everything from arts and culture, human services. A lot of our clients are human services. We work with education, higher ed. So it really cuts across the nonprofit sector as well.
But a lot of the issues we're going to talk about recruiting and retaining kind of apply to all businesses. Would you agree?
Absolutely. I think, it doesn't discriminate against one sector or one industry. I think it really is cutting across industry as a whole. We focus on three areas. We focus on fundraising consulting, so a lot of capital campaigns, fund development. We also work with strategic planning organizations and with planning services. And then lastly, the area that I focus in is talent. So a lot of that is executive search, succession planning, working with organizations in terms of helping them plan their needs from a talent perspective.
Sure. And let's stay on that line. And one of the notes that you had sent me was the unemployment rates. I think first quarter, Ohio was 4.4, U.S. was 3.8. I mean, those are the lowest rates we've seen in a long, long time.
Right. So I think there's a couple things here. Obviously, low unemployment rate. I remember many years ago when I was in business school, I think 4% was considered full employment. So obviously, there are a lot of the demand is exceeding supply in many cases. But I think most importantly it's the types of folks that people are looking for and the jobs that they want to fill that is really critical. I work with a lot of development folks, C-suite folks in nonprofit, and the demand is tight. I mean, it's tough to find good folks.
The old supply and demand thing that we learned in college.
Absolutely.
That's loud and clear, isn't it?
Absolutely.
So let's revisit a lot of the challenges that businesses are facing today in the area of finding and retaining top talent. What are the challenges that you're running in as you go and recruit and try to replace some of this talent?
Wow.
That'll take you the rest of the podcast to tell me.
I think obviously people want folks that walk on water. So, I'm just wrapping up working with an organization in addiction recovery field. And they're hiring their top person, their executive director. And I think, they want folks that not only have the technical and the experience and the knowledge of the field that they're serving, but they need folks that have the soft skills, the competencies, and the abilities to do the job, and not only to do that work, but also to be seen as the leader in the industry and to represent the organization well in the community. So there's a big part of this is, who can not only do the work, but who can represent us as an organization and lead the rest of the folks.
Right. With this supply and demand issue with talent, how are you handling an organization, whether it's a for-profit or not-for-profit, that has limited budget constraints and needs to hire some top-end talent?
I think that's a great question, and the reason I think it is because I firmly believe that organizations have a lot more at their disposal than they probably give themselves credit for. Because I right now work in the nonprofit sector, it's tough to compete with obviously corporate or people that can pay high salaries. So there's other things that people can do, and that we've known, and this has been true for a long time, as long as I've been in the human resources field. People want to know that they're being developed. And you can do a lot of that without sure, it's great if you have training and development dollars at your disposal, but you can do that one-on-one. You can do it with job rotation, giving people new opportunities, new responsibilities so that they can learn from that they can see their career progressing. There's a lot of available training in the community that people can take advantage of. And I think there's another piece of this beyond training and development, and that's just purely culture.
We hear that, it's money, it's the benefits, and sure, that's a very, very important part of it. But what you pointed out, I think our listeners need to pay attention and develop systems about other stuff that are really more important or can be more important than just the dollar and cents. And I want to dig into that a little bit as we go through the next couple minutes. You'd mentioned too that sometimes corporate America will outspend or over recruit some of the talent that you're seeking because they can afford to do that. Their budgets are larger,
right?
And so they're gonna win if it comes down to just money. They're gonna win. But you're going to say, look, we have other things to offer.
Right. I mean, I think there's a lot that the sector that I work with can offer, and I think people are looking for meaningful work, and they want to know that they're making an impact in the community. And I think that's true across all generations, but we clearly are seeing that with the millennials.
Right.
I have a couple of interns that have worked with us in our shop, and it's amazing what these folks do coming into the workforce right out of college right now. I mean, I look at their background and the things they've been involved with. It's just amazing in terms of, even in the philanthropic space. So an example of that is the number of folks that are involved in Buckeye-thon at Ohio State University, for example, that raises money for Nationwide Children's Hospital. It's just astounding what they do in terms of getting corporate sponsorships and raising money. They're doing a lot of the things that people in the development field do every day. And so they're leaving school, entering the workforce with a lot of that knowledge already, but most importantly, I don't know if it's most importantly, but they want to know that the work they're going to do in the future has meaning.
We have many different podcasts over the years on recruiting of talent, so it is a hot topic. I mean, it just really is with our clients and our listeners, and every organization has that issue. Let's talk about how do you find the right person. I want to just kind of ask you a couple things, just fire away to and see where pick your brain a little bit on this. But how important is defining the role of that job? I guess it's the job description. How important is that?
It's critical. And I'm not talking necessarily just defining what the person's going to be doing. I'm talking about really digging into the other elements of the job. So what is it going to take from a competency perspective? What is the culture like? What is the opportunity there for the person? So what are they going to be able to achieve? And I think it's really highlighting all of that and putting that out there. But beyond, when I say putting it out there, I'm not talking simply posting, but I'm talking about actively, proactively going out and seeking the types of folks that are going to do that work, that are going to be happy doing that work going forward. And those are the people that you really, in my world, those are the people that you need to be looking for.
So as an HR guy, you're actually a salesman trying to sell the organization that you're working for to come work for me.
Absolutely. I think from a recruiting perspective, yeah, that's definitely true. And I think when I think of the other aspects of HR beyond recruiting, I think that's true. You're always selling the organization and the work that needs to be done and what the organization hopes to achieve. So how is it going to expand its mission and make progress?
How do you sell culture? How do you sell that to a candidate?
Wow. I'll tell you something I just recently did that I think was really selling the culture. We brought the top person back in to spend a day with a lot of different folks in the organization to get a feel for the culture himself. So it was meeting with the people that he was going to be directing, overseeing. But beyond that, it was the head of the foundation and talking with them, what did they hope to achieve. It was really talking with the search committee and meeting with the interim executive director. So I think in that instance, culture, I think it's seeing some of that firsthand. But there's, I think, many different ways to sell culture, and you just want to make sure that you're being honest.
Sure.
Let's face it, you don't want to put a culture out there that is not you, and then the person gets in the role, and then the turnover increases because they're not happy.
Right.
You don't want to sell them a bill of goods. So
you're so excited. You got a candidate, and you put them in there. Oops, not a good fit for the culture.
Right. Exactly.
And again, that's maybe where some upfront work, like you'd mentioned, the competencies, explore the competencies, and things like that. Let's talk about expectations, hiring expectations. Let's say that, I jump on the phone, call you at the Benefactor Group and say, Ron, I need a C-suite individual. Go find me one. How long is it going to take? I want somebody here by the end of next week.
That's not going to happen.
Good luck. Good luck.
If you could get somebody by the end of next week, you wouldn't be calling me. So I think it's really getting to know the organization and what their goals are and what they hope for this person in the role. I think it's really understanding the mission and the expectations and being very clear about that. How long is it going to take? I wish I had a crystal ball and could say, for this job and this role and this organization, it's going to take this long. But you really don't know sometimes till you get in and you're starting to build that candidate pool and see who's there and who's available. And then it becomes a little bit clearer maybe how long it's going to take. But I think for the executive director, the president, the CEO, it's not uncommon that it's 4 to 6 months.
Right.
Okay.
Okay. And again, that's where you guys come into play, can help an organization start that process maybe earlier or before the C-suite person is ready to resign or retire. That you have advance notice. You can go to work very efficiently and effectively for that organization. So again, I think that's a good rule of thumb, 4 to 6 months. At least that sets my expectation. This is going to take some time.
Right. There's a model that was developed quite a few years ago, maybe a little more than a decade ago, by the Annie E. Casey Foundation around executive transition management. And that model, it was actually first developed with Protestant churches. And part of the model is putting an interim executive into place for a while. But really, there's a whole piece of that, the first phase, that is really around putting together a leadership agenda and figuring out what is it that the organization needs strategically. Where are they headed?
Right.
Because if you can get a handle on that, then you're more likely to find a person who will be successful in the long run, getting the organization there. And then the other two pieces of that are search, really literally doing what we traditionally think of as executive search. And then the third piece is around, I call it onboarding, but it's really in the Casey model and the ETM model, it's called Thrive. So it's really setting the person up to be successful in the long term.
Okay. Switch gears a little bit. Obviously, attracting. I think you gave us some good insight there about defining the role and the competencies, and be clear about the expectation and the culture. And I think that's wonderful. Now we've got the person in place. And again, the title of our podcast is "Recruit a Team That Loves to Give Back." So I want to talk about retaining, your talent. And we all know there's the cost of turnover is very high, no matter what organization, what industry you're in. But let's talk about retaining and developing or putting that person in a culture with a company that likes to give back to the community. How do you sell that? How do you set that up?
To a certain degree, I think it sells itself. I think in the community that we live in, that I live in, I think a lot of folks know which companies are giving back to the community philanthropically. And we also know that that's a big drive for example, if you're recruiting folks in the from the millennial generation, we know that that's a very important piece of the work culture and the work contract, if you will. So I think to a large extent, when an organization gives back to the community, people know it and they see it. And in fact, that's actually how I first got involved in this work with the nonprofit sector. I was doing some corporate and foundation fundraising for the Human Rights Campaign locally here in Columbus with the Columbus Steering Committee. And in the gay community, in the LGBTQ community, people know which organizations support that community. They know which ones. I can name a lot of companies here in the Columbus, Ohio region, and we also know nationally which organizations support that element of philanthropy, if you will, that segment of the population. But I think more broadly, that's why companies want to do this. I mean, I've always contended most of them don't do it out of the goodness of their heart. They're doing it because they know it's part of their brand. They know that not only are their employees looking for it, the consumers, the people they serve, the people that they provide products and services to are looking forward to it, or look to that as well. And I think there's actually come together as one, if you will. The things that consumers want, employees want as well.
That's part of the culture thing you were talking about earlier. In this HR human capital process, it's crazy. We hear our clients wrestling with the issues, now with the cannabis issue and concealed carry. Those are pretty delicate and pretty tough issues. What are you running into in the nonprofit arena with those issues?
Well, I haven't seen that as much in the nonprofit, but I think part of it is because of the positions that I'm personally involved with right now. I mean, typically we don't see that in the C-suite roles. So I think, there are other jobs that I think that's critical. Of course, it's interesting. Like I said, I'm working with an addiction recovery organization, and of course the drug test and all of that's going to be critical. So, but I think that's going to become more and more important to the whole idea of around who are we hiring and how are we finding the best folks.
As you mentioned earlier, there's other things that are equally important other than the dollars and cents and what's in the paycheck. And I want to kind of just, run through that and see if there's anything that we missed. Obviously, culture, that's a big, that seems to be large on your radar.
Right, and with that culture, I'm thinking of things like flexibility, things like, there's a large organization, a very fast-growing organization in town. We know there's no such thing as a free lunch, but they have the chef does the catered lunches. It just was with a recruiter there last week, and when I looked around that culture, I thought, this is not much different than it was when I was in high tech in the early '80s, when during the .com years where we were trying so hard to get software engineers. So I think it's everything from how people interact in the workplace. What do we do? What do we provide for amenities? What do we do in terms of flexibility? So there's, it really encompasses a lot of things, and I think the one thing we'd be really remiss if we don't touch on, and that's the whole idea around diversity and inclusion, and how does that play into this, and how are we attracting folks that represent a lot of different ideas and a lot of different segments of society. So,
as I listen to you speak and look at your notes, you guys can help, the Benefactor Group can help. If I have a not-for-profit organization, you can help me define the roles, define what I want, define, my employment strategies. You guys do some very specific strategic planning.
Yes.
And this is one of them.
Yes.
So, fantastic. Yes. Our guest today has been Ron Guisinger with the Benefactor Group located in Columbus, Ohio. We had about 8 pages of notes and topics we were going to talk about today, but we only got through a page and a half, Ron. So we're going to have you come back and do additional more, maybe deep dive into some of this stuff. We scratched the surface, but, as I went through here, some of the services that your organization provides is truly wonderful, and it's a hidden resource that I want to encourage people to reach out and look at your website and just see what kind of services you offer to the not-for-profit community.
Great, thanks.
It's always interesting to see the impact a company's culture can have on every aspect of the business. And of course, anytime businesses can promote a culture of giving back to the community is a great thing for everybody. Thanks for listening to this episode of Unsuitable. If you would like some more company culture insight or additional recruiting and retention tips, check out today's page at www.raycpa.com/podcast. And don't forget to subscribe to Unsuitable on Ray Radio on your favorite media player, or check out the Ray & Associates YouTube channel for a closer look at what's going on behind the mic during each episode. Until next time, I'm Dave Kane, encouraging you to loosen up your tie and think outside the box.